Okay, welcome back to Breakfast Daily. Now it's time for the news review segment for today. And before I introduce my guests, I'll start off with some print media, starting off with the Daily Graphic this morning. Now, the Daily Graphic has on its front page, first phase of Tema Port expansion opens for business tomorrow. Pages 24 and 25 have the full details. And also, special supplement on insurance inside. So get a copy of the Daily Graphic to find out exactly what they are talking about. Now let's move on to another story here. ATL still struggling. 17 million Ghana cedis government bailout exhausted. So the full details, page 3, you shall find same. And also majority-minority clash. They debate funding of free SHS from oil money. We shall be looking at this story shortly. Now, the Ghanaian Times. Health alert and Cobra Basin contaminated with fecal matter, according to a study report. So we should definitely be very, very careful, especially if we are living in the western region area, around the Wassa area, where you can find this particular river. GHA responds to Accra and Sound Road danger. And Ghana records first lowest maternal mortality. Full story on page 17. Finally, on page 13, zipline drone saves 113 students from acute diarrhea. Could we have done this without the zipline? I'm sure you can answer this yourself. Another story here, Business Finder. Banks profit up 38.9%. And also PIAC laws GNPC's CSR activities. And finally, data protection law critical for fighting terrorism. So that's what we have on the front page of the Business Finder. And now we shall move on to our next paper, that is the New Crusading Guide. The New Crusading Guide has on its front page, EU commends Ghana. So EU commends Ghana is what we have on the front page of the New Crusading Guide this morning for reducing corruption. So while some may be saying that corruption is on the ascendancy or is at an all-time high, the EU may have a different opinion. And there's a picture here of Ambassador and Head of Delegation of the European Union to Ghana, Dana Akonsia. Increased loan repayment tenure for African countries. Foreign Minister tells China. And finally, NACOB warns students over cannabis-infused shito. Wow. Yeah. Cannabis-infused shito. All the best in your SSC or WASI, or as they call it now. The Chronicle newspaper, village gang disarms policeman, tie him to a tree and subject him to severe beatings. So apparently this policeman sought to arrest one community member over some alleged threat allegations and then he was rather tied to a tree and beaten mercilessly by the community members or some young men in the village. Otumfo on chief sacking spree. Interesting way to put it. And Black Stars will overcome. Coach Kwesi Appiah. Now let's move on to another newspaper for this morning, The Custodian. The Custodian says here, the EC, 195 million Ghana cedi scandal. CJ Committee's full report. So the report is finally out for those who want to get more details. Grab a copy of The Custodian newspaper and read for more. Oil cash not diverted for salaries. PIAC. Let's get single African air transport market. Baumia has this to say. And moving on, legalize marijuana in Ghana. Rastafari Council pleads. So they want the marijuana thing to be legal right here in Ghana. All forms of cannabis. Let it be legal, says the Rastafari Council. Much madring. First Lady gives 6 ambulances to hospitals as government procures 300 more under 1M1C. So that's what we have on the front page of the Custodian newspaper. And finally, by way of print, the ABC News is what we shall look at. Kofi Adams in car fraud case. State V8 vehicle impounded. Page 3 has the full details. Adopt world best practices that will ensure responsible and sustainable mining, Asantehene to GIADC. And finally, Ghana received commendation for taking steps to reduce corruption. Now let's move on to some online stories. CitiNewsroom.com, your one-stop shop for all news online. Receiver sues ex-Beige Bank CEO subsidiaries, demands 1.3 billion Citi refund. And moving on. Police dares Ghanaian traders over closure of Nigerian shops. How we are handling this, I repeat, is not the best. 3 suspects remanded for robbing traditional priest, kidnapping son. And GUTA to petition IGP over inhumane treatment to members. I talked about this yesterday. We shall continue the discussion today. Auditor General indicts GEPA over unsubstantiated spending. We shall be looking at this story shortly, right after introducing my guest. But now let's go to the business world. Citi Business News. Farmers in Tumu report of reappearance of 4 army worms. I thought we had dealt with this. Anyway, that's the last story I shall look at by way of online stories. So go online, citinewsroom.com, and of course, citibusinessnews.com, and get more stories from there. Now, I have been joined by Eric Edem Agbana. He is the Deputy National Youth Organizer of the NDC. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
It's been a while.
Yes, it's been a while. Good to be back here.
We've also been joined by Nana Damoah. He's a communications consultant with, he is the communication director for the Ministry of Energy. Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast Daily.
Thank you very much, Wilberforce. I wish that one day I become a director, but I said now I'm just the head of a unit. So
head of the communications unit.
Yes.
Solid. Anyway, so it's good to have you here as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, we shall have you join the show as well with the hashtag Breakfast Daily. And of course, the WhatsApp line is 0550585832. That's what you see on the bottom of the screen right now, 0550585832. So do send your messages as we continue the discussions. I'll start off with a story from citinewsroom.com. Says Auditor General indicts GEPA over unsubstantiated spending. And I'll read really briefly. The Ghana Export Promotions Authority has been queried over an amount of 192,000 Ghana cedis it reportedly expended on honorarium, courtesies and protocols, special and sitting allowances. Now, these payments, according to the Auditor General report, Auditor General's report, were made to all members and supporting staff of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Trade, Industry and Tourism, Finance, and the Women's Caucus in Parliament. The report noted that the payments which were made between August and December 2017 alone could not be substantiated. So it goes on, and there are actually quite some damning statements here that I must say were made in the report. It says between August and December 2017, the authority made payments totaling 192,000, in excess of 192,000, describing as honorarium, courtesies, protocol, special and sitting allowances to all members of the staff of the Parliamentary Select Committees. We have mentioned these groups already, but was unable to substantiate the payments. We requested management to provide justification to substantiate the payment totaling 192,000 to various committee members, failing which the former ES and Director of Finance would be jointly held liable to refund the amount. So there are other claims that have been made against GEPA especially, but there's been claims by, for instance, from the former Deputy Chair of GEPA that he has not, for instance, taken any amount for spending allowance, even for clothing allowance, or even in his 30 months of office. Edem Agbana, I'll start with you on this particular story, on some allegations that have been made against GEPA per the Auditor General's report.
Wilberforce, good morning to you once again, and good morning to our cherished viewers. Let me also use the opportunity to remind all our viewers that the NDC is still celebrating its 27th anniversary as a party. We have undertaken a number of activities. We are currently planting over 300,000 trees across the country.
Oh, wow.
Just to prove the point that we are a party that is environmentally friendly and want to invest in the country by planting trees as part of our celebration. Come this Friday, we will also be having an all-night service at the party's headquarters to thank God for what He's done for us and making us the biggest and the most successful political party in the Fourth Republic. You know, we've won the most elections, and also we have contributed most to the socio-economic development of this country. I'm sure there's no debate about that. So let me use the opportunity to congratulate all members of the party for 27 years of great work done for Mother Ghana and the world at large. Corruption is a very, very important issue. And if you look at the fact that not too long ago, even the Center for Democratic Development, CDD, revealed that between 2017 and 2019 alone, over 9.6 billion Ghana cedis has been lost due to corruption. It tells you that it is a canker that all of us must be united in fighting. I think that corruption must be eradicated or minimized in our system, especially in the public sector, where people are given the mandate to serve the state and to work for the country, and then they end up engaging in all acts of corruption. And that is why some of us are of the view that we ought to strengthen our existing institutions to be able to tackle the problem. So when you know the magnitude of the problem, then you appreciate the kind of work institutions like the Auditor General's Department is doing now. Now, the Audit Service Act 2000, Act 589, which established the Auditor General's Department, mandates it to primarily be responsible for auditing all public institutions and public funds and how
it's
they
actually
are
established by the Constitution.
Yeah, I mean, it's established by the Constitution, but the Act is the Audit Service Act 2000 or Act 589. And then the Section 11 is what mandate or what outlines the specific duties or responsibilities of the Auditor General. In the past, we are used to an audit service which usually will come up with a report, send it to Parliament, Public Accounts Committee sits on it. We hear wild figures being quoted as the amount being embezzled and all of that, and we don't hear anything about it again, and it goes out. But I think that it is important to remark that the current Auditor General has shown some force in helping to tackle corruption, and I think many other civil society organizations and fair-minded individuals share the same position with me that the current Auditor General is somebody who is working so hard to ensure that we tackle corruption in the public service. But beyond auditing and coming up with some of these reports, the question then lies in what are we doing as a state to ensure that when these reports come out, it does not just become a topic for media discussion and it ends with the Ghanaian culture where an issue comes up and in the heat of the moment, everybody is just interested in expressing an opinion. Then a few days or weeks after, the issue dies out. There have been several audit reports indicting many individuals and state institutions and all of that. But the question is, how many of these issues have we seen prosecuted at the courts? We haven't been able to follow through to have it done. So I am more interested in the post-audit activity. Now you listen to the individuals who were in charge of the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, and they are all denying that there was no wrongdoing and all of that. So it will then become their word against that of the Auditor General. And then we discuss it in the media and we allow it to go and all of that. But there is something that is very important that you and I must pay attention to. One, that all these three individuals that were in charge of the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, we were told or they were asked to step aside. The president actually sacked them in June 2018. Now, when they were sacked, what was the basis for that sack? It means that there may be some issues that the president or the government, the government was convinced that there was a basis for which those individuals should be asked to step aside. Now, we have a culture in this country where when public officials are found of any wrongdoing, especially when it has to do with corruption, they are asked to step aside or the position is taken away from them and then they are walking free and nothing happens to them. And in any democracy where you don't have strong punitive measures for public officials who engage in corrupt activities, you are actually emboldening others to also undertake that infamous and nation-wrecking activity of engaging in corruption. So the question is that when President Akufo-Addo asked Gifty Clenham, Eric Chum, and the other gentleman, all of them to step aside or took the position from them, what was the motive? What was the reason? What was the basis? Have we been able to follow up to see that these allegations that were made at the time, like fixing some salaries and allowances that they were not entitled to and they took and all of that, those were allegations because no court of competent jurisdiction has actually ruled on the matter, and that is why I'm very careful with my choice of words. So what has happened to that matter? Are we not going to follow up to see what really happened? But there is a bigger problem, which is not specific to the Ghana Export Promotion Authority. It has to do with the conditions of service of those who are appointed to head some of these public institutions. Can we have some uniformity so that if somebody is heading Ghana Standards Authority, BOST, TOR, and all of that, there should be some uniform. We shouldn't leave the decision as to what they are entitled to in terms of allowance to the board and the management of the organization alone. Because what is actually bringing this whole problem is that there have been people who were in charge of the Ghana Export Promotion Authority in the past. Now you have a new board and a new management sitting down, and then they decide that we are going to introduce A, B, C, and D allowances. Then the figures come and they are so huge that then it raises eyebrows, allegations of corruption and malfeasance and all of them comes. The president asks them to step aside. Now the Auditor General comes out with a report that actually indicts the said individuals that were asked to step aside, and in some instances they have been asked to refund some amount of monies that were paid to them wrongly. So the question is that can we have a system, and this talks about solution, we must be looking at, addressing this issue. Can we have a system where we have some uniformity in the conditions of service of these CEOs and this chief executive
so that
officer,
it won't be up
so
to
that if you are at Cocoa Board, if you are the CEO of Cocoa Board, it shouldn't be the mandate of the Cocoa board to decide that we are increasing because Cocoa Board is earning so much or raking in so much revenue internally. As for Cocoa Board CEO, we can pay you maybe 100,000 and all of that. And we have seen it in the past. These are things that have been with even successive governments. So I think that it is important for us to have a conversation on how we can streamline some of these things so that the management and the board cannot just sit and decide that this is what you are entitled to. Because when you speak to some people...
To be fair to your point, they are in different working environments. So for instance, a company that would be taking, let's say, a risk allowance would not be the same for a more sedentary company. So it is similar to how the single spine salary structure is rolled out.
Okay, you have some fundamentals that
so it's not that cross-board uniformity,
so
but
you have
categorized uniformity.
You have some uniformity in terms of the fundamentals. Some things are very basic. Then in the special instance where you have some extra, maybe risk allowance will be different and all of that. We need to apply that kind of system where by the time I am going into the institution, I know, for example, that if I am coming to head the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, this is what I am entitled to. And within the 4 years that I will be heading that institution, I cannot sit with the board to revise it and say that we are introducing A, B, C, and D, and which will cause some of these problems. But I think that the Parliamentary Accounts Committee, the Public Accounts Committee, and even the individuals that have been accused in this issue, we must find some finality to it. Let us be interested in ensuring that if indeed there has been some wrongdoing and some offences these individuals are brought to book. I am told that the member of parliament for Ashaiman is going to present a petition
to the office of the special prosecutor.
I think that we must encourage some of these actions so that beyond just talking about these issues in the media, we should see that indeed people who are found culpable of some of these acts should really suffer the punishment for it, so that corruption will be made very unattractive in our society.
Very well. Okay, Phil. Nana.
Thank you for this opportunity. I believe that this morning I've heard a lot from Agbana, Eric, and it's made me think a lot about how lucky we are as a country to have the kind of leadership that we have at this particular point in time. It's heartwarming to know that, I believe his name is Ernest Nogbe.
Yes.
And this has decided to present a petition to the office of the special prosecutor. This was a measure that was implemented by this government, by this president as a vision, and that is being, used by all bodies herein. The NDC is now obviously also deciding to use the same vehicle, and it shows that they have confidence in the system that the work can be done. It's also heartwarming to know that they moved away from their previous position, that it wasn't a necessary office among all other allegations that was made. Again, he said something which I find very interesting, that corruption is endemic, and that when persons engage in corruption, they are either, asked to step aside or they are removed from their position, or the position is changed. And it reminds me of a lot that, sometimes when criticisms come against leadership, they need to accept it. Because I remember that after the Brazil scandal, the Minister of Sports at the time was removed and sent to the office of the president. And myself and my political party took a position that was a very wrong move. Because, if there were issues surrounding that and you wanted the person to step aside, let that be the case. And it's heartwarming to know that he notes that the president asked the executives of GEPA, he didn't actually ask them to step aside, he sacked them. They were sacked, and then now investigations are coming up. The only thing that I have a problem with in the submission is to seek to say that, we usually just comment about these matters and it's gone. You're aware of the Occupy Ghana and the various measures that they have taken, which has now made the surcharge, refusal and surcharge,
of course.
a mandatory part of the Auditor General's role. As a result of that work, and I think sometimes we need to give credit to civil society where it is due. They were very, very loud on these matters. They were very visionary on these matters. And today, the surcharges that you are seeing is there. But there's one issue that I have with the report as it was read. It appears to me that it is not a final audit report, if you read it, because the Auditor General says we have asked them so it is an interim report. Now, in public administration and public service, what usually happens is that when an audit is conducted, findings are made, it is given to management for management to respond to within a given time frame, and then a final audit report is prepared. We've already heard Mr. Akilu Saibu, I believe, come out and say that some of the allegations that are made in there is not true. I know that as regards clothing allowances, he has refuted it outright. As regards the laptop that was brought up, he's been very clear and categorical in saying that he asked it to be taken out of his terminal benefits, among others. So this is an ongoing issue. I have a problem when such matters are categorized as finalized matters, because then indeed the injury that is done to these persons, is almost irredeemable. The impression is created as though it is a done deal and there's nothing wrong. But I do not believe that if it is a done deal, these individuals would not have been contacted for their opinions to have been sought, for them to even, not just their opinions, but also provide documentary evidence that indeed I never collected clothing allowance. So it's up to Mr. Saibu to provide evidence that he never collected clothing allowances, and also to show that indeed he requested for certain benefits to be taken out of his terminal allowances. I believe that all the other deputy CEOs as well would, have similar opinions. Again, in the running of public sector, administration, certain matters come up. And I'm not surprised that these issues are coming up, because Gifty Clenham and her team have been moved out and a new leadership has come in. That continuity is always a big deal for us in this country. And wherever there's that lack of continuity, sometimes, in times past, we've been told that documents are missing. In times past, we've been told of several things. So this creates the imbalances that we see. I'll therefore appeal that let us not be too quick to, pronounce definitively on these matters, because it's still an ongoing case. It is important for all of us to follow the matter. But I am also very glad that at least even the opposition is recognizing the fact that this president is allowing state institutions to do their work. Now, if you look at how state institutions are run, the audit mechanism is a measure to ensure that everybody is going by the rules. So if you do not go by the rules, at the end of the day, an audit will expose the flaws and the wrongs in the mechanism. Then you are given the chance to respond. When it is finalized, it is finalized. Then it becomes a document that the police, CID, YOCO, and all others,
or even Parliament,
you know, can take it up. And yes, it will also go to the Public Accounts Committee. You haven't just, you know, taken yourself out of it. And then now we are seeing activism from NS Nogbe in going to the Special Prosecutor, which is another measure that this president has introduced to ensure that we stem corruption, you know, or nip it in the bud.
But granted that is an interim report, is he not being a bit too hasty?
Who?
NS Nogbe. Honorable NS Nogbe.
Well, you see, it's a measure that he decides to take. He's a member of parliament. He's fully aware of what happens to Auditor General's reports. He knows all of these things. But you see, the Constitution is what it is. It's a living document. So if he decides to do that, I will encourage him to do that. Let's even test where it will go. And I'd want to see somebody also get up and go to the Supreme Court and say that what the steps that has been taken is premature. And then let's test the law and expand the frontiers of the law. This is a democracy. Ghana is a thriving democracy. Now, as you can see, all of these are happening under the leadership of His Excellency Nana Damoah Akufo-Addo. And it is such a sharing of ideas and the allowance of the people to exercise their right and contribute their views. Whilst we collectively continue to fight corruption, that is necessary for the development of any country. You cannot take that away from the man. And I think that, you know, such discussions that as are ongoing is also critical. But let us not be too hasty in declaring judgment over matters that are ongoing. It's a very painful matter that you smear an individual without even giving him the chance to also state a side of the story. What we now know, and it has become a trend, and I would plead that if it is possible, the media also be a bit circumspect in rushing out there with some of these matters. I would prefer that we discuss finalized reports that we know they've been given the chance to respond to, and their responses have been considered. But if we just, you know, make findings, preliminary findings, and we discuss these preliminary findings as a matter of fact, then we are, you know, slandering individuals and not giving them the chance to respond to them.
Very well, very well. Thank you very much. I know you have a response. I'll come to you after a break. I want to go for a quick break. When we return, we shall be talking about other things concerning GUTA and the back and forth between GUTA, Ghana Police Service, and some foreign traders in the market, amongst others. We'll also be talking about something very, very key, also related to corruption. Stay tuned to the Breakfast Daily. Don't go anywhere. Okay, welcome back to Breakfast Daily. It's still the news review segment, and I shall be reading your messages shortly. But in the meantime, we are still joined by Eric Edem Agbana. He is the Deputy Communications Officer for Deputy National Youth Organizer for the NDC, and not forgetting Nana Damoah, the Communications Consultant or the Head of the Communications Department for the Ministry of Energy. Eric, you wanted to respond to what he has said in respect of the Auditor General's report.
Yes, I think that my brother tried to do a bit of propaganda by creating an impression as if this is the first time that a president is sacking an appointee or a CEO and all of that. I just wanted to set the record straight. In fact, we have a plethora of examples under President Mahama, President Mills. But you recall that the MP for Nsawam, Honorable Frank Anodompre, petitioned President Mahama at the time over allegations that the Shard boss had then Mrs. Vivian Lamte had slept in hotels, costing some amount of money and all of that. She was removed from office. So certainly that was a president committed to the fight against corruption. Apart from that, even when this gentleman, Edu Asari, the former MP for Adenta, was the CEO of YES, the Youth Enterprise Support Fund that was set up by President Mahama after his involvement in the Brazil whatever, you realize that he was also asked, he was also sacked and a new CEO appointed. There are many others. In fact, we even have on record where a deputy minister, just for a phone conversation, alleging that she wanted to
get $1 million before she gets out of office.
That was also sacked. That was even just a phone conversation that was recorded and leaked and all of that. So it is not as if President Akufo-Addo is the one that all of a sudden has become a pioneer of anti-corruption, that he's the one sacking people and all of that. Again, he created an impression that we want to resort to the special prosecutor, which means that we have confidence in the system and now we are fighting corruption. The truth is that the NDC's argument was that we had enough institutions in this country to fight corruption. In the absence of the special prosecutor, several petitions were presented to Shraj and actions were taken on it. As we speak, even as we have the special prosecutor, a lot of people still prefer taking petitions to the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice. And as we speak, the NPP chairman, for example, Freddie Blay, is with having an issue with Shraj over the 275 buses that he is purchasing for the NPP constituencies and all of that. So I think that the record, I mean, it must be noted that in the absence of the special prosecutor, we're still fighting corruption anyway. We have several other institutions. Again, you asked whether Ernest Longbe is not being too hasty. In the past, you see, we didn't need to wait for the Auditor General to have a final audit report on an individual or an institution before you can call for an investigation. In fact, a mere allegation of corruption, you can go to several other bodies, being IOCO, CID, and all of that. So, NS is not rushing. In fact, this issue, I think that it's even long overdue. It is an issue for which 3 people were relieved of their position. He has enough grounds to go to either special prosecutor or Shraj seeking for some actions to be taken. Again, he mentioned the issue of the Brazil scandal. Let me just put on record that when Elvis was moved as sports minister, it wasn't because the commission of inquiry, which was set up after the World Cup, had found or had made any adverse findings against him. But it was just an issue of indiscretion and the fact that the president was not too happy with maybe some action that he has taken. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you exercise poor discretion in a matter, it amounts to corruption. Do you get it?
It depends if it causes financial loss to the state.
So there is no finding that has said that Elvis has caused any financial loss to the state. When he was assigned to the presidency, office of the president, there was nothing wrong with it. But in this particular instance, we are talking about causing financial loss to the state. We are talking about some amount of money that have been paid wrongly. In there, they are saying it was paid wrongly to them.
I want you to.
We are talking about.
We want to move to another story.
We are talking about CEOs who went home with state properties like
allegedly
laptops.
at this point.
No, I have heard. I have heard one of the deputies say that, admits that yes, he took away the laptop, but
it should be taken away from the terminal fund.
Taken away from it. Why didn't he make that particular request before he even took the laptop away? These are issues that maybe you can say that in the course of using the laptop, you believe that there are some information or data on it that is so personal to you that no one else can use. Because of that, you want to pay for it. But you don't take it, wait for an audit report to come before you make a request that deducts it for my benefits.
Okay, thank you very much. I want us to
give a chance, please.
Just in less than a minute.
We need to set some matters straight, first of all. In the issue of the laptop, it wasn't as though the request was made when the audit report came out. If you check what the gentleman has said, he said he made the request at the time his terminal benefits were being calculated. But listen, so a minister in charge of a sector acts irresponsibly, exercises gross indiscretion, and the reaction is to take him and bring him to the presidency rather.
There are
a couple of issues that he has raised.
I don't want you to read. There
are a couple of misunderstandings that
I can respond.
It's going to be a back and forth.
But Wilberforce, the issue is, I'm coming. The issue is, I spoke. He spoke. I spoke, and he's been given a chance.
No, I have that discretion at this point.
I agree with you, but I
reserve that sole discretion.
I beg you. But a couple of things have been put out there that are not factual, and so let's deal with them. If that is the standard that you say was used to fight corruption, then it gives us cause to worry. And I'm not surprised that you are saying that corruption is endemic, because such actions promote the endemic nature of corruption. If I exercise gross indiscretion,
did it cause financial loss?
Please wrap up, then we can move on, please.
If I exercise gross indiscretion, and I'll be rewarded with a position at the presidency, then it is impetus enough to see a lot of people taking subsequent actions, knowing very well that come what may, I'll be rewarded with a position at the presidency.
Okay.
And with all the perks that come with the position of the presidency. There are several other things that are not factual.
I don't want us to go into those things.
I just want to state that on record, that there are several other things,
for instance,
that are not factual. He started by saying that I am seeking to create the impression that the president is the first person to observe. You got that impression, that is you, but that's not the impression.
Okay.
And it is not an issue of... I'm coming.
Nana, let's just end this at this point. I want to move on to another story here, which says majority-minority clash over... they're debating funding free SHS with oil money. So that's very, very important that we look at right now. I've seen quite a few of your messages, and I promise to read them shortly. So if you haven't sent a message yet, it's 0550-585832, 0550-585832. You can also send your messages with the hashtag Breakfast Daily on all social media platforms. Now I'm reading from page 16 of the Daily Graphic this morning, which says here that the minority in Parliament yesterday accused the government of using oil revenue to fund free SHS and instead of investing the money in infrastructural projects. So it said funding education with revenue from crude oil, which was a finite resource, would deny future generations the opportunity of enjoying from the revenue accrued from the country's oil resources. And it goes on to say, but the majority refuted a claim and indicated that the investment in education or free SHS was the best decision taken by the government, since it was benefiting students irrespective of their religious, ethnic, or regional backgrounds. Now, the majority said if students were supported with revenue from oil, they would become an important human resource and contribute their quota to development of the country. Edem, I want to come to you on why the minority are insisting that let's not use the oil revenue to fund free SHS.
I think that it's important to re-echo the point that the minority in Parliament and the NDC as a political party believes in giving quality and accessible education to every Ghanaian child. And in fact, the SDGs, as we have it, emphasizes the point that we must leave no child behind. And that is what the NDC government was committed to and we will commit ourselves to when we return in 2021. However, talking about this issue of free senior high school education and how it is funded, the argument is that we are of the view, or the minority in Parliament is of the view that when you discover a particular source of funding for a heavy program, a social intervention that is widespread, like the free senior high school policy, you ought to have a sustainable source of funding. Now you are taking proceeds from oil resources, which is a finite source. I mean, you will not have oil forever. Again, it can dwindle. Proceeds from it can dwindle and all of that. So the argument is that instead of using the oil proceeds to fund free SHS, why don't you look at some more creative ways of raising the finances to sponsor the free SHS that we're talking about? Now, when you talk about oil resources, the NDC government believes that investing in things like infrastructure and industry, which is going to help, I mean, recurrent, not the kind of recurrent expenditure that you have now. Free SHS is more or less, even though you are investing in individuals, you are investing in building the human capital of the country. It's in the short to medium term a consumption. So when you take proceeds from the oil resources, we are saying that invest that in infrastructure and also the heritage fund, so that the future, you can have future generations also benefiting from the oil, because the oil is not going to be with us forever. That is simply the argument that we are making. Because when you look at the figures that the government continues to send around and all of that. Recently, the president in Oxford, when he was addressing the forum in Oxford, he said that the country is spending about $103 million of the oil proceeds on the free education. When in February again, they indicated that very soon they were going to completely cut out the ABF, that's the annual budgetary funding amount that they allocate to the free senior high school. You see, this issue is very sensitive because often the moment we begin to raise issues with the source of funding for the free SHS, our opponents create an impression as if we do not want the free SHS to even be funded or the program to continue. But we are only raising a legitimate concern about sustainability, that you are dealing with a sector that is very, very, very volatile. Tomorrow, prices of the oil can come down to the extent that the proceeds that you are realizing may not even be enough to fund the free SHS program. What happens to the gap that it will create? So we are only saying that have a more sustainable source of funding for this program, and then we can move on as a country.
Thank you very much.
I'd have been very glad if that was the point that the minority was making.
But that was the point.
Have a more sustainable means of funding. But what I see here clearly, and what Edem and his submissions are sought to say, is that we should stop using oil revenues for funding free SHS and invest in infrastructure. I see him shaking his head.
In a nutshell, what I believe the minority are saying is that oil is a finite resource. So once the oil is totally depleted, how are you going to fund free SHS? May I ask a question?
What resource is not finite? What natural resource is not finite?
Maybe water.
It is a finite quantity. So if oil is a finite resource, yes, all our resources are finite. Nobody has infinite resources. So what's the point there again? And I believe
the point is, what happens when the oil resources are totally depleted? How are you going to fund free SHS?
Now let's look at this argument again. They decided that we should, or they are arguing that we should use oil resources to finance infrastructure. What happens when the oil resources get finished?
Maybe the infrastructure would be able to finance the free SHS from there.
I'm sorry, but these arguments are as hollow as they sound.
Please explain.
Okay. Politics must be done with principles. For a social democratic party that says that they believe in the people of Ghana, I'm surprised to be hearing such arguments. Indeed, I'm shocked, I'm mortified to be hearing such arguments, and they are boldly making it in no less a place than the House of Record, Parliament. So, in 2016, I believe, if correct me if I was wrong, there was a debate over the ownership of People Matter, You Matter between the two major political parties. What they are saying now is, yes, people may matter, but infrastructure matters more.
But infrastructure is for the people.
As regards oil revenue, I'm sorry, but you see, it is an elitist argument that is shocking. I have been privileged enough to attend secondary school and go to university and have a chance to do my master's. Edem has been privileged enough to have same. You have been privileged enough to have same. But I can tell you that my father almost did not go to secondary school because they couldn't afford it. But for the benevolence of an uncle who also had 4 children, such conditions exist. And my father was able to then go through school for the benevolence of his uncle, and I was born, and he's been able to educate myself and 4 other siblings. That is what education does. That chance. I was privileged. But what about those Ghanaians who are also born Ghanaians, living in places that do not have these benefits? They should be denied the chance to go to school and also change their fortunes because we want to use the money to build infrastructure. Is that the argument that they are seeking to make? Again,
I think the argument, for instance, I'm coming. I think you're trying to oversimplify the issue of them choosing infrastructure over free education. The argument is that oil resources are finite, and then if you use it for free SHS, for instance, in the matter of, let's say, 20 years, imagine we lose all our oil resources in 20 years, and MPP are still in power, how are we going to finance, or even if NDC, this is supposed to be a continuum. Free SHS is supposed to be a continuum. So how are you going to fund free SHS? And also, if government is able to find a way to build infrastructure that will generate funds, this will be a more lasting solution than a natural resource.
That right there is the disbelief in the capability of the Ghanaian. When you educate an individual, you set him free. Citi FM is a private company that was started by an individual that has created jobs for all of these people. What they seem to be saying is that they do not believe that the people of Ghana are able and capable of, with the benefits of education, coming out to such innovations that can ensure that we can sustain things. Look, Google, it was started by an individual. Today, may I say that they have perhaps more funds than the state of Ghana. They are saying that they do not agree with that vision because the people of Ghana are incapable, with the benefits of education, of being able to attain such heights. If not, then what are we talking about?
Granted that your argument
is true.
The other side of it is that the other side of it, the other side of it. How is government going to sustain the free SHS?
My brother, I am a private individual. The state pays for my health benefits in a way, but through the national health insurance. Though we all pool funds. I'm a private individual, but the state is constructing roads for me to use. So if the argument is that education is for the private individual, so we shouldn't spend on education, then again, I look at it and I'm shocked. Because really, if you dissect the arguments that they are trying to make, as I've tried to do this morning, you really realize that it is either a certain elitism that is on display, or they do not believe that the Ghanaian has that innate ability to be able, with the benefits of education, ride the storms. And I'm surprised for a socialist party to be making the sort of arguments that they are making. My brother, you see, and it touches me to levels that I cannot imagine. And you're a young man, you're boldly defending this. You're boldly defending. I know people.
I just want to ask you one question. I just want to ask him one question. So when the oil resources are totally depleted, with all the education given to individuals, children, how are we going to, in the future, continue funding free SHS?
Before oil resources were discovered, we started paying for basic school. With what resources?
State resources.
There was no oil. But we still prioritized that and paid for it. Right?
Okay.
They are saying that we should invest in infrastructure because infrastructure will bring revenue that will enable us find other sources for finding, for funding free SHS. That's an interesting argument. And I'm saying that the other side of that same coin is that do not invest in the people of Ghana because they are incapable of being able to realize the same funding with their ingenuity to continue the program after it ends. And that is what shocks me.
Okay, I want to wrap you up on that, and really briefly, just in less than a minute, Eric.
I think that it's important to make the point that my brother Nana is only engaging in some propagandist attempt to twist the argument of the minority. Yesterday, in Parliament, when the Honorable John Jinapo spoke to this particular issue, he asked two questions that the NPP has been running all over and they have not been able to answer. Question number one, what happens when we deplete all of our oil resources? How do you intend to continue the funding of the project, knowing that we have a population that is fast rising and the amount of money that you're going to invest in the free SHS program will keep increasing? So how do you intend to fund it? It's a simple question.
Okay, question number two.
Number two, how sustainable is the funding that when the proceeds dwindle? We all know that the oil prices or oil proceeds is dependent on even the global market. What happens?
Can I answer?
Now, you have a situation where...
He says we've not been able to answer, so I'm asking if I can answer.
Yeah, I'll give you the opportunity.
I will have to give you the opportunity.
So, okay, you have to do that, not to take your... But I think that it's important to make the point that we are not saying that no one should invest in the education of individuals. In fact, as a political party, we have invested more in education than any country, than any political party in this Fourth Republic. We are the only party that you can credit us with the polytechnics, with public universities and all of that. They haven't been able to even invest in a single one of them. We believe in the capital, in the human capital of this country, but we are saying that find a more sustainable funding for this project, because you came up as a, yes, you brought it up as a priority in your manifesto. So find an alternative, more sustainable solution. And that is all.
I'll wrap you up on that.
We are
the questions he said the MPP have not been able to answer is a question that I put to you twice already.
Yes.
That when it's exhausted, what's the way forward? And I don't think I got a clear answer from you.
But if I may, I'm sorry, but okay, so we present yearly budgets to Parliament. Those yearly budgets spell out how we are going to fund things. I don't think that we've presented a 10-year budget before.
Okay.
Do I think we've
so moving forward, we'll be able to find a way to.
So now you agree with us that we can look at the future of the program.
May I finish?
Sustainability.
May I finish, please?
Please wrap up.
Now you are raising issues 20 years down the line when you know very well. Now on an ongoing basis, he raises the issue of oil prices. Oil prices are not stagnant in perpetuity, which you are saying. But on a yearly basis, we do our estimates and find out. And bear in mind that free SHS is not being solely funded by oil revenues, for instance. There are additions from other sectors.
No.
So critically speaking, I'm coming. Critically speaking,
everything is being funded from the oil. Which other sources?
If I'll be allowed,
Eric, allow
if I'll be allowed, thank you. Critically speaking, if it is not for a strong disbelief in the human capital of this country, what are you seeking to say?
Okay, Nana, you have still not answered the question, but let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move on. The Ghana Union of Traders Association says it will petition the Inspector General of Police, David Asante Apetu, to call the Accra Regional Police Commander to order for inhumane treatment he allegedly meted out to some of its members. So we know the back and forth that happened with GUTA, and of course the whole tripartite arrangement that's happening right now, or even there's a fourth arm being the executive not seeming to want to act on Section 27 of the GIPC Act. So when GUTA demonstrates, the police have now issued stern warnings that we'll deal with you. However, nobody is dealing with, or no member of the executive seems to be dealing with what we have written in our laws to be unlawful. Nana, what's going on?
Was it a demonstration?
Was what a demonstration?
GUTA, what they did, was it just a demonstration?
No. Okay. What they did was not a demonstration. Okay. No.
So they went beyond a demonstration to engage in certain activities that are prescribed by the law.
If it was as to the beating of the Greater Accra Regional Chairman of GUTA, amongst others, it was they went to the police station themselves to inquire as to why one of their members were arrested. And they did not go with placards, sticks or anything, and they ended up being beaten up. So that's what happened, and they're asking the IGP to look into the matter. Otherwise, they may retaliate.
Oh, listen. There are rules and I think that this whole thing stems from, and let's not shy away from the matter. There's this pressing issue of these Nigerians and their presence in this country and their involvement in the retail trade, among others. Now, as you may see, conflict of laws. I don't know if my reference to conflict of laws is right, but the ECOWAS treaties that we have signed on to versus our own municipal laws that we have, and that conflict is continuing to be there. I believe that several measures have been employed to ensure that these measures are resolved amicably, but we don't have a solution yet. It's an ongoing process. The last time the majority leader in Parliament called for an emergency meeting of the Authority of Heads of States to ensure that these measures are resolved, and it creates several imbalances. The trickle effects is what we are beginning to see with all of these little acts of violence all over the place. You may remember that Swami also had very serious consequences. It doesn't help that, the cases of kidnapping that we have seen so far, it appears that citizens of another country are also very prominent in all of these things. But Ghana is a peaceful country. We have nothing to do except to continue to appeal to our people that let us, first of all, continue to follow the rules and regulations that we set for ourselves so we can live in a peaceful country. That's the reason why we set the laws for ourselves. Number two, we will continue to have engagements with nationals of other countries, particularly Nigeria. Let me not shy away from it. Let us develop high levels of tolerance. And I can feel the pain of GUTA in addressing these matters, because yes, laws have been made, and there are other municipal laws. And if you listen to the Nigerians as well, they would also tell you their own definitions of some of these things. And it will take the meeting of the heads of state. This matter isn't coming up for the first time now. It's been there over the years, and we've continued to kick the ball down the line.
Why is the executive not acting on Section 27?
I've just stated to you that there's a, if I may call it.
You've been doing engagement for decades. Why is the executive not acting?
That's why I've just said that they've been continuing to kick down, kick the ball down the line. We'll
continue to do engagement.
I'm saying that we've done that for a long time. It needs to come to a stop. I believe that a serious engagement of the authority of heads of states needs to be held and have these matters addressed.
Once and for all. Thank you very much. Briefly.
I think that, quite briefly, I think that whatever is happening with regards to GUTA, its members being brutalized, and their members also closing down shops and beating up Nigerians in Swami and some other places.
No, Nigerians have not been beaten up in Swami.
No, in Swami,
they closed down shops.
Closed down their shops, yes, and ransacked some of the shops and all of that. These were the reports that we read. All of them boils down to the fact that there is some impunity in this country where people think that they can take the law into their own hands and do things as they please. Section 27 of the GEPA Act reserves some commercial businesses solely for Ghanaians. And it's even set a minimum capital requirement for foreigners who wish to enter same or similar businesses. Why haven't we been able to implement that law? It is not the fault of the Nigerians. It is not left for the Nigerians to tell us that we have a rent law that says that before you give or you rent your apartment, to a foreigner, you must inspect the person's travel documents and residence permits and all of that. So it is not the fault of the Nigerians or whichever national. It is our own inability to implement or enforce our laws that is responsible. But I think that GUTA should be a bit more calm and deal with the police and ensure that they tell the police to do the right thing instead of taking the law into their own. So I've listened to the GUTA. Yes, it is frustrating. I agree with GUTA that the law enforcement agencies have failed to do their work. But I don't think we have gotten to a point where they should take the law into their own hands. But the police and the executive, they must show some commitment. They must show some commitment to ensuring that they protect the local business, because the GUTA members are really suffering.
Yeah, thank you very much. Eric Edem Agbana is the Deputy National Youth Organizer of the NDC, and not forgetting Nana Damoah, who is the head of the Communications Department for the Energy Ministry. Now, up next is our DIY segment, and thank you all so much for staying tuned, and of course, continue watching Citi TV. Don't go anywhere.